Welcome back to More Than a Sunday. I am so glad that you're joining us. Hey, today we are hearing from Becky Ravesloot. She is a coffee shop manager at Faith Church in Dyer. She's also one of my dear friends. Today we're hearing her mini testimony on how she trusted God through a very intense journey. I'm so excited. Let's hear from Becky now.
In December of 2023 already, holy cow, I found the cancer on my own. It was triple negative breast cancer, but it was very close to the surface of the skin. For that, I am eternally grateful because I don't know if it ever would have been found had it not been for that. So in January of 2024, I had a biopsy and they confirmed that it was breast cancer, triple negative. My OB that I went to initially said, you know what, I think it's just a cyst, but let's send you for a mammogram just to be sure. Okay, great. So I go for that, and then even that doctor reviewed the findings and said, I really think it's just a cyst, but let's do a biopsy just to be sure. And I'm like, do we have to do that? Yeah, we should. Okay, fine. So I'm so thankful that they both trusted their gut on what we should do, because that led us to that diagnosis and then ultimately treatment. And so my phone rang at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we'd been waiting for that phone call. In our minds, we were waiting for that phone call for her to say, oh, it was just a cyst, all is well, we don't have to do anything, you're fine. And not only did they biopsy the mass, they also biopsied one of the lymph nodes under my arm. And so she led with that. She said, well, the good news is that there's no cancer in the lymph nodes. I'm like, oh, okay, great. In my head, I thought, okay, great, here we are, we're done. She said, but unfortunately, it is cancer. And so then, your mind just goes blank. And here my husband is downstairs with my kids. We're getting ready to literally walk out the door to take them to school. And I had to keep it under wraps for about 20 minutes until at least we had no kids in the car. So, and I will be honest, I don't remember the next couple hours after that. I just don't. I think it was just so overwhelming. I couldn't handle it at that point. For the next probably like 30-ish hours, it was just awful. I don't think I've ever been that low in my entire life. My husband jokes that he saw me cry more in that 30 hours than he had our entire marriage. And, I say that with all the love in my heart. It was a joke because I don't cry. I don't really show emotion that way. But it was terrible. I thought, I've only had at that point like 13 years with my husband, and our kids were very small. They're 5, 11, and 13 now. So, I thought it's just, I haven't had enough time. I'm not going to get to see them grow up. I'm not going to see anybody get married. I'm not going to meet any grandkids. What's my husband going to do? We jokingly a few years ago had a conversation before any of this started. I told him, I said, I love you. If anything ever happens to you, I'm out. I'll help raise grandkids and stuff like that. But you need to get remarried. You really do, with all the love in my heart. But, just because you have a conversation like that doesn't mean that you want that to play out by any means. So that was rough. But the light was, I have a cousin who is the president of a cancer research facility in Arizona, and got on the phone with him, and he asked me what the diagnosis was. And the first thing after I told him, he said, okay, you're not going to die. I can't tell you that our success rate is 100% because we're not allowed to say that, but our success rate in treating cancer like this is over 99%, which was great. It was like a light switch. We went from this horrible, dark place to, okay, there is hope. So now let's just put together a plan so we can get through it. And not that we don't love God and trust him and believe in him, but it was so nice to just have that other reassurance that everything was going to be okay. I had 16 rounds of chemo, so that just basically means there was 16 infusions. The first 12 were weekly, and so you kind of just live and die by the calendar and the clock those first 12 weeks. And then the next 4 infusions were once every 3 weeks. That specific infusion was called the Red Devil, and it's awful for the first 10 days after the infusion. And then you finally start to come out of it, and then you feel normal again, and then you have to go through another one. And then after chemo came surgery. So they went in and they removed all the dead tissue. There's no longer a tumor because that was gone pretty quickly. And then radiation after that. So 32 days of radiation daily. You were off on the weekends because the office wasn't open. And that was awful. It was really, really awful. It wasn't bad until the last 2 weeks. And then, unfortunately, just the skin doesn't cooperate at that point. It's just really bad. But we talk about me not crying. And at that point, every morning when I woke up, I would just cry. And then every night before I went to bed, just because the pain was so awful. We could see God through everything. I mean, there are so many examples, so many ways. We would be here for hours, but a few of the things that come just to the top of my mind are the fact that our family verse, our wedding verse, which is now our family verse, was on the wall in the hallway when I walked out of my biopsy. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall set your paths straight. When we see that verse displayed anywhere, it usually coincides with something that's happening. But as we all know, that's how God works. Another example of how we saw him through all of this was my nurse navigator. You're given what's called a nurse navigator during a cancer journey. And that person is basically your cruise director of your entire cancer treatment. We discovered pretty quickly that she is a member at Faith Church Cedar Lake, and her name is Christine Phillips. She is wonderful, and not only would she pray with me, she held my hand for a few very painful procedures. She came down to every single treatment. I think the biggest way would be just the absolute gigantic outpouring of love that we saw through the whole thing, whether it be through meals or gifts delivered, cards, but most of all, of course, like just the love and the hugs and the prayers, all the prayers that we got. That would be the biggest visible way. We are human, you want to trust him the whole time. You want to trust that everything is going to be okay, and then it's going to be fantastic. And most of the time in my head and even outwardly, I'm like, it's going to be fine. We just have to get through it. It's going to be great. I really don't feel like my time on this earth and my work in the kingdom is done. We felt very strongly about that, my husband, Chris, and I. And thankfully that came true, but you never know. You hope and you pray, Lord, please, my kids are so small. I haven't had enough time with my husband. Just please don't let this be done yet. And thankfully it wasn't. So that was great. We did, I would say about 85% of the time we trusted the Lord. I feel bad for it not being 100%, but just one of those things. You never know what God is going to use for his glory. You have no idea. I mean, who would have thought that he would use stage 2 triple negative breast cancer for his glory? But he absolutely has. And the one thing that I have said for a very long time, even through the process, once we started seeing all this fruit, is even though it was horrible, there were a lot of painful steps, there were a lot of things that just weren't great, I would go through all of it all over again because of everything that we've seen and how we've come out of this as a stronger family, a stronger husband and wife, a stronger friend, if you will. So, and I maintain, I still would do it all over again for all the fruit that we've seen.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If this content inspired you, make sure to follow our page. We'll produce more content just like this in the future. We'll see you next time on More Than a Sunday.